I would like you to imagine the following. I'm in the dock. And I'm in the dock with my own particular company for advocating REDD in a commercial environment. And people who stand up and say REDD, well, you first of all have to explain that. And don't forget, I work in a ladies' fashion business. So if I go red double D, that probably means something else in a ladies' fashion business. All right? Probably less illuminating than it is uplifting. That might help some of you with that joke, but still, never mind. The old barrister... Think about it. I'll explain it afterwards if you like. Yeah? All right. All right, we get it, but it wasn't funny. Thanks, Jeremy. Yeah? That's great. You really ought to be on television, Jeremy. The old barrister's adage goes, when you're defending the accused on a murder charge, you really must convince the jury of three things. First of all, he didn't do it. Secondly, if he did it, it was in self-defense. And thirdly, if all fails, well, the bastard deserved to die anyway. It's pretty similar when arguing for environmentalism in a purely hard-nosed commercial environment. Companies like mine, from the dark side, tend to argue as follows. Well, our actions do not harm the environment. Once you've lost that argument, then we switch very, very quickly to, yes, but the commercial benefits outweighed the harm. All right? And then the third one is, yes, but all those who are making claims against us are extremists, eco-freaks, and not really entitled to serious consideration. You've probably all been there. You've probably had those accusations leveled at you. I'm inviting you to see yourselves as the jury. But please remember, I'm not just talking to you in this room. I'm talking to all the people that hopefully are going to see the film that we've made. Those are the hard-nosed commercial guys who I want to persuade it actually makes sensible commercial sense to get involved in environmentalism. And that may not necessarily be you in this room. It's the people who are going to watch the film. You guys I'm talking to. So, they will produce a verdict on my performance later on. And hopefully, it will mean that they will place environmentalism as a major, major part of their business policy and not just worthy of consideration for a CSR silo belonging to the PR department. That's a very important distinction. The first 2 points, I think I don't need to discuss. I believe that since Kyoto, flawed though it may be, the issue as to whether we are causing harm to our environment has already been addressed. I think that argument is one. How to solve it may be something different, but I think we're all aware that that has caused damage to the environment. The second one, well, the economic benefits justify the damage. Perhaps we ought to bring in, oh, I've got one of these. I've got some pictures for you. That's me. Oh, yes, sorry. The joke about red and green was after Gerald's visit. We decided to paint the company red. All right. Sorry, let me rephrase that. Once he left the premises, we decided to paint the town red. That was right. All right. This incident here, you will all know what that is, the Deepwater Horizon. Now, you try telling me that an organization that says, oh, yes, but the environmental damage, all right, does not cause more damage than the economic benefits. I think the economic benefits to BP of this have been well documented, but there's just one little fact that people might not know. During the crisis and after the crisis, the BP sales in the United States dropped between 10 and 40% due to a backlash against the company. Now, that is the more significant backlash and economic effect than any fines they might have to pay. They're one-offs. They will accrue them. They'll put them in the balance sheet somewhere. But the drop-off of sales is permanent. That's their brand that's suffering. So I'm not going to argue the first 2 points. Let's go for the third one. My position as Puma General Manager is to represent that. That's our mission. And I am charged by the gentleman of by the prosecution, and you have to decide whether I'm doing my job. The prosecution's charge is I am neglecting my duty to the business to make it desirable and sustainable if I'm concentrating on REDD. It's not desirable. I have to earn EBIT. Well, I'll tell you something. It's my absolutely steadfast belief, and anyone can quote me who likes to, that the single factor which will eat away fastest at my EBIT is if the consumer rejects my product, just like the consumer who rejected BP's product. I may be worried about the euro crisis. I may be worried about whether I have the right strategy for emerging markets. I may be worried that Greece is going to collapse any moment now. I may be worried about regulation in Africa. The thing that really scares me is that at some stage the consumer is going to say, I don't want anything to do with Puma. That's what scares me. And it can happen. All right? What do you think would happen to my wonderful midterm strategy if the consumer decided that? We need to go further than just having CSR. We need to go further than just doing less bad. We need to start doing more good. And that's what the consumer will reward. And in fact, seeing as it seems to be a bit of a buzzword in this room this afternoon, they will give us credit for it. Let me give you an example. Imagine a world where your consumer avoids buying minced beef because he's scared that it might have horse meat in it. Not too far away from reality, huh? Imagine a world where your consumer no longer donates to charity. Sorry, I've got to go back. This is the statement that I hate most in the whole world. I've got to go back to this, it's worth it. Milton Friedman once said the social responsibility of business is to increase its profits. That's pretty brutal, isn't it? And I believe the consumer of today has rejected that. Sorry, that was just a bit of an aside. All right, that got that reaction from the animals in Africa. All right. What I was going to go on to say is, imagine a world where the consumer no longer donates charity, but decides to buy a Madonna DVD, because he likes the brand of Madonna. And why does he like the brand of Madonna? Because Madonna does this sort of thing, helping people and kids in Malawi. They think that's a good thing. She's working on marketing, on PR, on branding. I'm not here as an advocate for Madonna. But you know something? BP work as much as Madonna does on social projects. The brand of Madonna is way up there after this, and the brand of BP is way down there after their Deepwater Horizon event. It's to do with the consumer and what the consumer thinks of your brand. And how do we make sure that the consumer is giving us credit? She's getting a whole load of credit for that. BP, well, yeah, a few black marks on their credit book at the moment, I would imagine. So imagine a world where a consumer wants to be associated with her rather than with a company like BP. It's very simplistic and not necessarily very truthful, but that is the way that the consumer views things. So we need to make sure that the consumer sees our sustainability as something he desires to be associated with. All right? That's called branding. And we need to brand our message and make sure that the values which are emotional and to do with brands are totally associated with the environmental message that we want to put through. And then the world will take it over and push it forward. So I can choose to say, all right, all these consumers who are rejecting sustainability, let's just talk around it and avoid it. Or do I do what I think I ought to do? All right, I should influence them. That's what I'm paid to do. I influence people that the stuff I'm wearing is cool, all right? Not because I wear it. I pay very much cooler people to wear it, all right? And we do sell the odd T-shirt here and there because people believe that this T-shirt is cooler than someone else's T-shirt. It would be invidious to name names, all right? The consumer decides what's desirable. Let's move on to this, all right? Now, one of our exports to you guys, and you know what's coming here because I live in Austria. We exported one of our most desirable ex-governors to you, yeah? Arnie. Now, at a certain stage of his life, Arnie used to drive Hummers, all right? Now, this is, I'm not trying to say with this picture that Hummers cause deforestation. That is the wrong interpretation of this picture, all right? Okay. But at one stage, Arnie and Hummers were indistinguishable, all right? Let me give you a fact about Hummers. It was exciting. It was hugely masculine, very, very successful. And in fact, the brand of Arnold Schwarzenegger fitted the brand of Hummer so perfectly that they were the perfect fit. Let me give you a statistic. I'm going to get this right because this is a very important statistic. We've had lots of statistics today. This one is almost the most important. A year-long study conducted by a firm that provides statistical information to insurance companies so that they can determine rates found that the drivers of Hummers receive approximately 5 times as many traffic tickets as the national average. All right? Is that machismo or what? All right. However, very soon, the Hummer shifted from a brawny status symbol to the automotive pariah. Sales dropped, and Hummer tried to sell the company, or rather, General Motors tried to sell the company. They thought they'd found a buyer. In 2009, however, sales plunged by 67%, and the buyer was a Chinese company called Tengjong. Tengjong, in the end, looked at the consumer development of this, and they decided they weren't going to go through with the sale. They rejected it, sale fell through, and in 2010, Hummer closed down. These people jumped on it. Right? Daniel Becker, the director of the Safe Climate campaign at the Center for Auto Safety in Washington, wanted to take a lot of credit for that. Closing Hummer simultaneously improves the health of GM, China, and the planet. Hummer should rest in pieces. The truth is, what decided the fate of Hummer was the fact that that Chinese company realized they didn't have a consumer in China for that car anymore. I doubt very, very much whether Daniel Becker was affecting, through his pressure group, the opinion of the Chinese consumer of the Hummer. The Chinese automotive industry decided there was no more takers for that. And I'm talking to chief executives listening through this film. One of their biggest markets is China. Be aware, China is very environmentally aware. The new young consumer will reject products that are not environmentally sound. If you're building your strategy for the midterm, be aware of that. So, my company has decided to take action, and that was our mission statement. All right. So, let me give you a few facts about Puma. We claim that 30% of our apparel is sustainably made. Ah, yes, but the prosecution says, you may say that, Mr. Bowen. What do you mean by sustainable? I've only got 30 minutes. I'll skip that one. Well, the 30% is judged on my standards. They're internal standards. Do you know what percentage of my consumers believe me when I say that they're sustainable? 16%. And I'm staggered, because I would expect it to be single figures. Big business is not believable anymore. It's just ahead of politicians in terms of credibility. But we're not believable anymore. So if I can claim all these various things, it doesn't really work. I need third-party certification. That's the only thing that will give me transparency and credibility. So I really needn't bother making any claims, because no one's going to believe it anyway. It's a bit like claiming to be a fashion icon as well. No one believes that either. Sorry, Mike. Yeah. We may plead to be green. And the members of the jury that I've invited to judge me may plead to be green, because they are the CEOs of big companies. But they're not green either. We need an advocate. We need someone who's going to plead that case for us. All right? Another statistic for you, 84% of today's youth believe that it's their generation is going to have to deal with environmental issues, not ours. In China, it's 90%. Think about it. Those are the future markets. Anyway, we all need an advocate. And that's where the not-for-profit guys come in. Ironically, and I say this deliberately, ironically, they're the ones who can be trusted. These are the ones that, in my entry, said they're the ones that are being passed off as eco-freaks, and as a small minority. But actually, they're the ones who we really, really need. They're the ones that can vouch for us. They're the ones that have transparency. They're the ones that have credibility. And they can really make sure that what we say is measured and certified. Without them, we're nothing. So the NGOs used to say, however, yes, Mr. Puma, you're claiming that 30% of your product is sustainable. 70% of your product is not sustainable. What do you say about that? I use fair trade. I made a collection that was fair trade. I was very proud of it. In fact, I'm wearing it. Yes, but what about all the other collections that are unfair trade? You open yourself up to that. And it's absolutely right. And what I say is yes, only 70%. Right? Next year it might be 60% is not sustainable. Last year it was 80%, and the year before that it was 90%. So it's a movement towards the right goal. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint. That's paraphrasing what Mike said earlier. Do it little bit by little bit. Right? And if we do that and do that properly, then we'll get there. All right? Can we in big business on our own be a force for good? No. Let me restate that. Big business cannot be a force for good. The best we can hope for is that we're a force for better. I don't think we can be a force for good. But together with NGOs, we can be. But let's move on from that, all right? Instead of working with the Clean Clothes Campaign or Greenpeace, working with them is great. We have a great collaboration. We've got some wonderful things going on together. It's very, very collaborative. They help us, we help them. But let's move one step further than that. And what I mean is working with people who aren't NGOs, but people who have a commercial proposition, like Wildlife Works. The circle on the left is Wildlife Works. They have a product which is very sustainable. They make sure everything they do is sustainable. However you interpret sustainable, and I'll get to that later, they own that circle on the left. And I reckon Puma's pretty good at owning the circle on the right. And at the moment, there's a big gap between them. And my vision is that. And I'm going to show you how I'm doing it. We have a real practical example because we've been working with Wildlife Works for a while. We've been producing at Wildlife Works in order to offset our CO2. That's how we first started. We need to do less harm. On top of that, our parent company acquired a stake in Wildlife Works last year and offsets the emissions not just from Puma, but from Gucci, Stella McCartney, Bottega Veneta, Yves Saint Laurent, Volcom, and a few others. In 2012, we made this collection. That's the Wilderness Collection. All made in Africa, partly sourced in Wildlife Works, specially made for the rangers of another safari company called Wilderness Safaris. That's it in retail. That's it in the Sustainable Store in Bangalore. And if anyone wants to hear about the Sustainable Store, and Jack, I think we ought to talk about that. There we go. Welcome to the Puma Sustainable Store, worldwide first. Built sustainably, heated sustainably, cooled sustainably, lit sustainably. And we're very, very proud of that. Problem is we're not making any money on that. All right. To make it sustainable, we also have to make money on it. So there's the collection. Oh, there it is. Look, it's hanging out to dry outside the factory in Rukinga. That's it there. Right? There we go. And that's actually being made there. That's the T-shirt I'm wearing today. All right. Come to come to San Francisco from a little factory out in the middle of Kenya. All right. That's how it can work. However, I've not yet won the argument because the prosecution has a final argument that if I'm saying you can make products there that are commercially responsible, like all of these, that I think are great, right? Why am I sharing it? Normally, I should be patenting it, keeping it a secret. Well, that's the difference today. It's all very much more collaborative. And if you're into sustainability, you don't keep it to yourself. You share it. You try and encourage other people to do it. So, I'd like to talk to you about this product here, all right? This was the Puma Creative Factory, where we invited people to come in, create their own products. They became the ambassadors for the product, and they spread it around the world. It's not our design anymore. We've given it to the consumer. It's the Linux approach, if you like. It's open source. That is really powerful these days, in the days of social media, Facebook, Twitter, and all the rest. Very, very powerful. So I won't go into this in great detail. I'll just invite you to look up the URL, pumalovetheyplanet.com. Right. These are the ambassadors we've got. As you can see, from all over the world. Budapest, Dubai, Warsaw. I think I've got Russia. Right. We've got huge response for that in Russia. Who would have thought T-shirts being made in Wildlife Works are being sold in Russia and being talked about in Russia by all these people, right? Fashion editors. The fashion editor from Glamour Fashion magazine, all right? Sorry, that's an excerpt from Vogue, bottom right, right? I think that's L on the top left, talking about a T-shirt made in Rukinga in Russia. Isn't that great? It's all about branding, right? That's how we turn this into a commercial proposition. Those are the ambassadors. These are really famous people making their own designs, all right? The one thing I do want to talk about is it's all gone through the social networking, the internet, all right? We put it on the internet, on Facebook. People voted for which product they like. And when they voted for it, they bought it. It's a bit like, you know, Superstar or whatever it is, the X Factor. If you vote for something, then you go out and buy it, don't you? If you vote for the shirt, you go out and buy it. And these are all really quite nice creative shirts, right? Oh, talking about creativity. Just to show you. Who's heard of Leroy Stick? Leroy Stick was a guy that during the BP crisis invented a spoof PR company called @BP Global PR. He was the guy that, some of his tweets were just amazing. Some of them were just wonderful. This was one of my favorites. All right, here we go. Safety is our primary concern. Oh, well, actually profits and safety. Oh, well, profits and image and safety. Hey, but it's still right up there, isn't it? Right. BP tried to shut him down. You cannot shut someone else down. The consumer owns your brand these days. We don't own it anymore. Public opinion owns our brand. You have to be transparent. You have to be open. And in fact, the people who certify our brand in the same way as the people who certify REDD production is the consumer. They know all about your brand. They are our third-party certifiers. And you have no choice. You have to be open and transparent. BP tried to ban the press from going on the beaches when they were clearing all the oil up. Doesn't work. That backfires. Sorry about that. All right. There you go. Just say no to people like BP who try to control their own brand. I actually put that in there. This guy didn't make a secret of what he invented. He didn't patent it and keep it to himself. He was the first guy who I thought was open source. Jonas Salk discovered the polio vaccination. Right? He refused to patent it. That's real open source. Now, if he'd lived in this day and age, he'd have got so many credits. Whatever else he decided to do, his credit rating would have been so way up here, anything he wanted to do, he could have done it. His misfortune was not to have invented Facebook at the same time, so he could get the credits. Right. I'm going to finish with two things. We're not all passionate about sustainability. We have people that we have to persuade. And there are people out there listening to me who know, yeah, I'm sold on the idea. I want to do it. But I feel a bit like a lone voice. Right. In Puma, there are lots of people that do support sustainability, but the majority of our managers don't really understand it. They don't realize it's actually a commercial proposition, that this is the way forward to make money for our company. It's a little bit of an irritation. I'll be very honest with you. Right? I've got to convert them. So there are people out there who are not necessarily Yvon Chouinard, founder of Patagonia. You know, I'm not saying to you guys, go and leave your companies and build a company that just only sells sustainable stuff. No. We've got to go step by step, convert the people in our companies, and make sure that they realize it's a commercial proposition. And we've got to make money by doing that, and make money for the factories as well. Make sure that it works, and not just that we have the feel-good factor. My collaboration with Wildlife Works is a start, but it's only a minor part of my company's turnover. You saw that overlap? It was a pretty small overlap, but it's a start. And the overlap will, in my vision, get bigger and bigger. We are actually at that exciting point of a new venture. Will it work? Won't it work? Anyone who's ever invested venture capital will know. It's that tipping point. Is it going to go? Is it not going to go? That's why I'm so excited now at the moment with our venture together, because it's just that so exciting thing, and not just the play safe, let's just make a few T-shirts in the factory in China. That's so boring. It's not fun anymore. Yeah? Let's do something that's fun with our lives. That's where we are now. It's entrepreneurial. Oh, and the whole point about entrepreneurialism, there's the risk factor. If there was no risk, there's no fun, eh? So let's make sure we take a little bit of risk. There's no shame, however, in starting tentatively. Again, Mike said it. Do one village at a time. Find the Mama Mercies, not just in one village, then go to the next, and then go to the next, and she will influence them, and find the next ones. Do it step by step. Make sure you've got a solid base. That's my appeal. Within your own companies, spread that. If you think my analysis is right, as a businessman out there, and you want to make money, you have no time to waste. Make sure that your product is honest, open, sustainable. I will help you sell it. Make it in Wildlife Works. I'm not going to keep that to myself. If you're listening from Adidas or Nike, talk to Mike Korczynski. I'll give you his number. Make your products there. I'm not going to keep it to myself. Make the whole thing work. And then I will feel that we've actually done a good job in saving this world. Because this world I want to save for my kids, even if it's Adidas or Nike saving it. That's okay. Because the truth is, we didn't inherit this world from our grandparents. We actually borrowed it from our children. Thanks very much.